think with these never-ending taxes, they're able to kind of sell it under this guise of it taking a village. We need more tax dollars for this program, for that program. You are robbing not only your children of a relationship, of relationships that can be so life-giving, and just having more stability, more adults around you that you know truly care about you, but you're also robbing from yourself. Generational families are not as common anymore. So grandparents are not in the picture to be able to tell the adult children as well as the grandchildren, like, oh, you'll be fine. Like, I went through X, Y, and Z when I was younger, and then share these family stories and pass on this wisdom. There is a phrase that we are all familiar with. I think we've heard it spouted over and over again. It takes a village. Now, what I think is particularly interesting about this phrase, as I kind of dive into this thought, is the fact that I actually think that phrase is true. I've heard a lot of conservatives talk about this and say, like, you know, that's not true. Don't let them convince you that it takes a village. You don't need their help to raise your kids. And whenever I hear them say that, I think, okay, yes, I don't think that we need the government's help to raise our kids. A lot of conservatives will also say sayings like, I don't co-parent with the government. Yes, I am on board with that. But what I do think is that that phrase has actually existed for a long time, and that Democrats, liberals, progressives, whatever word we want to use, have clung on to that phrase because it is actually a true phrase, and it has been a true phrase in regards to family and community for a long time. Now, the reason why I think that that phrase is now being weaponized, if that's the way we want to use it, it's actually not the way it was intended, I think, before, is because rather than it taking a village being your village, the village that you have decided to surround yourself with, the village that you have decided to live in, it has now become, it has taken the meaning, it's like transformed into meaning the federal government. The government is the village that you can rely on, and that we all, in some really vague way, via our tax dollars, are all going to be there for each other in this vague village. Now, a big part of what I think is nefarious about that, I've had this conversation with my parents quite a few times, particularly over the last few years, as I have moved to live next door to my parents again and raise my children with them. We are so blessed. Like, literally, I can't even tell you how much I realize that it is such a blessing that we not only get to live near my parents, but literally next door to my parents. But I have come to realize, and I realized this through leaving California, because yes, Dan and I felt that in order to start a family, we needed to and wanted to leave the state of California. We couldn't picture ourselves raising kids there. But once we got out of California and we were in Tennessee and we had our first child, Dan and I looked at each other and we were like, dude, I can't picture raising my kids away from my family. Not only in terms of like the more pragmatic stuff, the day-to-day, kind of the resources of having your family with you and having their help, having that village around you. But also, on a side note that's not a side note, it was a very weird concept to me to think of like how much of my life I had spent in both physical and emotional proximity to my parents, that then all of a sudden I was just going to be away from them, and my kids would not know my parents in the way that I knew them. Now, obviously, even being next to them, I have a different relationship. I have a whole past with my parents, a whole lifetime with my parents. But to think that like my parents, the souls and the humans of who my parents are and were, my kids weren't going to experience that was unfathomable to me. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I felt like, no, we're a family. We're all a family. And that is something that I think has been, I don't know if you want to say architected, that's probably not a word, or purposefully pushed in some way by the government, by the public sector. But I think it's also made its way into faith communities as well, this idea of the nuclear family. And it's something that I think, like, you know, in churches we hear it more like, oh, you are meant to leave and cleave to your new family. You are meant to build your own family. And I agree with that in some ways, obviously. I do think that, like, you know, if things go the way that they should normally go and how time unfolds, me and my husband and our family will outlive my parents. We will be our own, we are our own family unit. We make our own decisions. But at the same time, I think that this is particularly, I think, a Western culture thing. We have lost so much wisdom and support and help, which I guess is like support, and love by cutting away from the generational family units, if that's the way we want to use it, the village, and instead separating into nuclear family units. And, this is kind of random, but track with me, especially because I'm a conspiracy theorist. I remember the first time I heard, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, that the government actually subsidizes airlines. They actually take tax dollars to help keep airlines afloat. And I remember thinking, like, that's really weird. And, now that I'm older, now that I've lived away from my family and I'm back with my parents again, I think there is something purposeful. Obviously it's purposeful if it's being subsidized, but I think that there is something behind that, this idea of not only making people feel like they don't really need to be rooted. It's so easy, just go wherever, hop wherever, travel wherever, but you can just leave your family, start your own family, and then, visit your parents when you want to, when you need to, and it's just a hop, skip, and a jump away, which even with the invention of airlines, I actually don't think that's true. I think that flying is actually a way bigger deal than some people paint it to be. I mean, I had a few years in my life where I was flying around a lot. I've been flying on planes really since I was a little girl, which is not, common for everyone. Dan had actually never been on a plane until we got married and we went on our honeymoon. And I had been flying on planes since I was like 6 years old. So, yes, it is easy in the sense that we don't have to hop in a covered van or a covered wagon and like travel for a month across the country. And in a lot of ways, that's awesome. But in a lot of ways, I think it's actually been detrimental to culture and to local villages, because it is so easy now for everyone to just up and leave. And I say easy, like I said, in some ways, I actually don't think that's true, because I don't know if I've ever been on a plane or gone on a trip without getting sick at one point, either on the way there or on the way back, catching some kind of cold, flu, something. I think it definitely increases the likelihood of illnesses being passed around, catching an illness. I also think it does something on the body to be thrown in the air, like in a speeding bullet across the sky. I think it's actually very intense. But it's easy in the sense that like you can just log on your computer, pay for your ticket, hop on a plane and go. Like a day later, you're somewhere else. And I think that that has done something to our actual villages, to our actual community. And this is coming from someone, obviously, who has moved a lot, who has up and like left communities multiple times. I went from California to Tennessee and from Tennessee to Idaho. But my mind has been thinking about this a lot over the last few years. And I think some of the reason I've been thinking about it is because of what I just mentioned, the amount of times that I've moved. And now, like I said, having 2 children and being with my parents, I look around and I see how much easier I truly believe it is for me and my husband and our family being near my family than it is for nuclear families who are separate from their generational, their wider family. Now, I do believe, and everybody's got a different life path, that people can essentially establish a family-like situation within a community of friends, particularly within a faith community. I think that those can really build some deep bonds and some longer bonds between people. But I also think that God in general gave us family for a reason. And I think that this Western view, like I said, of separating from our greater family to be a nuclear family is harmful for the whole village, for the whole family. Not only do my parents make me and my husband and my kids' life so much easier because they're there for us, they're there to support us and care for us and encourage us, but I also believe that we enrich their lives by being here. We have honored them by choosing to be close to them, because by seeing their grandchildren, by seeing us regularly, they essentially get to continue to experience the fruit of what they planted, what they built. I don't know, I'm reaching for words and analogies here and I'm not quite grabbing them, but you get what I mean. Parents put so much time into raising their children. And I think that one of the ways that children can honor their parents is by continuing to be in their lives. But I think it's a reciprocal, is that the word? Like it's a two-way thing. I think it is a benefit for both the grandparents and for the parents. Not every family dynamic is created equally. I grew up listening to Dr. Laura Schlesinger, and she talked a lot about how just because someone is your blood doesn't mean that you owe them anything. You are not supposed to stay in dangerous positions. You are not supposed to stay in abusive situations. But in general, I think that the culture has kind of propagated or cultivated a society that does not, and particularly Western culture, that's what I feel like I need to keep specifying, because I feel like in other places around the world, there is still an honoring of the greater family village, a generational family. You know, I have mentioned this before, that over the last couple of years, I have really been encouraged by the work of the Wilsons up in Moscow. They have their Canon Plus app, and that is where I've really listened to a lot of content from their family. And Doug Wilson's wife, Nancy Wilson, has a book called Silver Linings, and it's all about basically how to be a grandma. And in the book, the way she talks about being a grandma is so encouraging, interesting, inspiring to me for one day, God willing, when I'm a grandmother. And one of the things that she talks about, and I kind of married this concept with something I heard from, I think it was Abigail Schreier. And Abigail Schreier was talking about anxiety in this current generation and how anxiety has just shot up. And one of the things that she said, which made me think about Nancy Wilson, let's see if I can marry these concepts here and explain myself. But she basically said, Abigail said, that she believes that part of the anxiety that exists is because generational families are not as common anymore. So grandparents are not in the picture to be able to tell the adult children as well as the grandchildren, like, oh, you'll be fine. Like, I went through X, Y, and Z when I was younger, and then share these family stories and pass on this wisdom from an older generation, and not just an older generation, but they are directly connected to you. They are a part of you. And that's something, now connecting to Nancy Wilson, she talked about passing on your wealth to your children. And one of the things that she included in this idea of wealth and being able to pass it on to your children is the idea of family stories, stories of things in your life where God has shown you faithfulness and done a miracle in your life. And she talked about different stories in their family that go like 2-3 generations back that they saw, like, wow, God was so faithful to us. And to have a grandparent who's able to speak that over your children, or just a parent in general, because as you continue to grow, me being like the adult child, as I continue to grow, my parents are continuing to grow. Their view, their scope on life is changing as my scope on life is changing. And they're able to speak wisdom into my life and remind me of the things that are important, the things that really matter. And they're able to give me perspective with my kids in a lot of different ways, how fast childhood goes by, the things that they wish that they had done differently. The things they wish they had done differently, which that's something really interesting and cool too that can happen within the grandparent, grandchild, adult child kind of dynamic. Is I think that, you know, a lot of parents, if not all parents, you know, excluding people that are seriously, you know, maybe mentally deranged or have mental, I don't even know the words I'm looking for. They have severe mental health issues. We're going to speak in generalizations. Parents are doing the best they can for their kids with what they have, where they're at. They are loving their kids and they're navigating life. And life can be hard, obviously, and making those decisions fast on the fly as you go with your kids, it's hard. Even if you're reading parenting books, even if you are keeping your head in the Word and trying to pray for God's wisdom, which I do every single day, literally every single day before I go to bed, I'm like, Lord, and at the top of the day, I can't do this day without you. Like, I'm helpless without you, please. And even if you're doing all the things, right? Life is, can be difficult to navigate. And I'd say it's safe to say that every parent has made mistakes. I know that there are so many times where I've done things with my children that I'm like, man, I regret that. And then I think about all the kids that have gone no contact with their families. And I just think, man, if my kids went no contact with me, now I don't want to brush lightly over that because I'm sure there are lots of people that have gone no contact for real, deep, painful reasons. But I am convinced that there are also a lot of people that have taken that route that did not need to take that route, that could take the route of rebuilding the relationship. And essentially, I can't think of better words, but like letting their parents make it up to them, if that's the way you want to put it, and kind of heal those wounds, because a grandparent role is different than a parental role. In some ways, I don't want to say it's easier, but they're not the ones in the trenches every single day. And so I think in a lot of ways, grandparents maybe have more bandwidth and more patience for kids, or they can, and they have more perspective at that point. So they're able to look back and go, man, I wish I had done that differently. And they're able to love your kids in a way that can almost be healing for you. Sip of my tea. These are the things that they would go back and do differently. These are the things that maybe they learned and grew and changed in. Unless you're in a dangerous, toxic situation, I think that these parents that go no contact with their parents or don't let their parents interact with their grandkids, unless it's something serious, like I said, you are robbing not only your children of a relationship, of relationships that can be so life-giving and just having more stability, more adults around you that truly care about you, but you're also robbing from yourself. You are robbing yourself of the chance to heal and mend maybe childhood wounds, parental wounds, and see things in a different light. I feel like for myself, there are certain things with my parents looking back on now that I see differently because I have kids. I see the things that I'm like, man, like I said, I wish I hadn't done that. And it's just like, man, I hope that they forgive me and they don't hold this over me. And I just think about all the, like I said, the kids who have gone no contact with their parents. And I think it's really sad. It's also given me more grace for times where my parents have done certain things. And I think, man, now I see the moments that it is so hard as a parent. And especially like in my parents' situation, for example, they were completely separate from their parents. They were in a state all by themselves, away from all family members. And I think of all of the times now as a parent myself where my parents have stepped in to help me and they've essentially saved my butt as a parent. And I think, man, they didn't have that. It was entirely on them. Now, granted, that was their choice to choose to move away, to choose to have it entirely on them. But I have chosen to do the opposite because I saw how difficult that was. I saw what I wished I had. I wished I had grandparents, and I did have grandparents, but I saw them, if I was lucky, once a year. I did not have an ongoing relationship with them. And I not only wanted to give that to my children, I wanted them to have closeness with their grandparents. I wanted them to know the parents that I knew and to experience that. I wanted the support from my family emotionally, physically, just like literally strategically. I don't know what the word is that I'm like, pragmatically. I don't know the word I'm looking for. And I wanted my parents, just like I was thinking about in this Nancy Wilson book, to experience the fruit of their labor. I wanted them to see what all of those years of caring for me and loving me and supporting me, what it amounted to. I wanted, and I know even if I hadn't had kids, it's not, just about me continuing on the bloodline or whatever, but I think there's something so beautiful about that. And there is something cool about getting to essentially parent a second time without having to be the parent that's in the trenches all the time, but you've also got this like perspective and you've done it and you've seen it and you're maybe, God willing, at this point in your life as a grandparent, more established and able to help your kids. I think it's just a very symbiotic relationship, and that it really does take a village. Yes, you can raise your kids without a village, without a generational family. People prove it and do it all the time. But I'm at the point now in my life where I don't think that that is optimal. I don't think that that is, optimal is the right word, the best situation for everyone involved. So I say all of that, obviously not to make anyone feel bad. Like, everybody is in a different situation. Everybody has specific things going on in their life, which I guess means the same thing as a different situation. And when you're watching someone on the internet, like, obviously filter it through your own life experiences. But I say all of that to encourage those of you that are thinking about this, that are thinking about where you want to plant your roots, or maybe you're about to have kids, or you have young kids, and you've been kind of toying with this idea of moving back to be near your family. I wanted to give you insight from my perspective, what I think. And what I think is that generational living is so beneficial and life-giving for the whole family, for the grandparents, for the parents, for the kids. And I truly think that your chosen community is your village, not the government. I also think that under this concept of like, what is a village? I also think that a village is just like people being people, not necessarily like taking our tax dollars, which you guys already know I think taxation is theft. And I think that our current tax system is like out of control. I don't know if I've said this before. I feel like I need to start peppering this into videos so that we can see if we can like spread thoughts and people can get on the same page. But I truly think that a flat rate tax system, 10% across the board or whatever percent is chosen, I think that is the most fair. I think with these never ending taxes, they're able to kind of sell it under this guise of it taking a village. We need more tax dollars for this program, for that program. And in reality, I think that us as people, us as families, we are meant to implement these village-like this village-like care within our community, like I said, within our families. I think when people walk out these values in the private sector, within their families, by taking their skill sets and bringing them to the workforce, by helping their community, by caring for each other, I think that that is the village. I also think that the village exists within the church, and I personally think that government in a lot of ways is trying to replace the church. I've said this before, but I think that the government and the idea of secularism is essentially its own religion, its own worldview. And I think that a lot of people believe that that should essentially replace the church. And I actually think it's the opposite. I think that the church and your chosen community, and like I said, how you participate within your family, within your local community, your friend group, how you help each other, how you care for each other, I think that that is the village that it takes to raise children. And I think that when we kind of offload it to the government, you know, in my worldview, one of the top things is public schools. We aren't really vested. We really don't know the people that are teaching our kids. We don't know the people that we're sending them off to. In my opinion, we are the village, us, our families, our local communities, not the government. Along those lines, I have to give a shout out to today's sponsor, and that is the Tuttle Twins. If you haven't heard of the Tuttle Twins, they not only have a really cool like cartoon series, but the way that I heard about them is through their book series. I am part of multiple homeschool groups and group chats, and I've heard the moms in these groups talk about the Tuttle Twins for years and how the books within these series really encourage the values that I believe in, but bring them, I don't want to say down, but I guess we could say that, to a level at which kids can understand. On top of the kids understanding it, it helps parents understand it. So like this is their toddler series, and it's really cool because they have this, the 1, 2, 3s, the Bill of Rights. And in general, this is what the Tuttle Twins does. They take large concepts, particularly within government, and they break it down in a way that you can wrap your head around it and continue to teach and guide your children, and also make sure that you have those basics for yourself so that as you dive off into more complex topics surrounding essentially these base fundamentals, you have them down and you know really what you're talking about and really what to even research branching off of those topics. So right now in my hands, like I said, these are all the toddler set. So these are the books that I've been reading to Logan. Yeah, like one of the things in this book, the 1, 2, 3s of helping, they actually go through numbers, right? And they talk about, you know, friends, family, the food system, shippers, which, you know, we could talk about our food system, but that is currently the way that our food system is set up right now, and just mail in general. And they've got trains and planes, engineers, and the list goes on, and talks about all the different ways that people essentially contribute to society, how we make that village, and how our society continues to grow and develop, and all of that jazz. The Tuttle Twins has like an entire adventure series book set that really dives into, you know, older topics, but still for kids. And they also have 2 American history books. It's all framed through the eyes of conserving the Constitution and traditional American conservative values. So I think that's really awesome because it is kind of hard to navigate curriculum nowadays and how you're going to explain these topics to your kids. So I have a discount code and a link. I will put it right here and link it down below if you want to check them out. Shout out to you, Tuttle Twins. Thank you for sponsoring this video. Yeah, the main point of this video I think really was to discuss the idea that I think it's very important that us as parents, we develop our village, our community. And I think that the first way to do that, assuming that you don't have really, really unhealthy parents, I think the first way to do that is by considering connecting with your family, raising your kids in generational living, if that is something that is an option for your family. I'm really just kind of like throwing this idea out there because I am someone that has benefited from this. And I'm someone who just a few short years ago was pondering this and was kind of losing sleep over it and dreaming about it and thinking, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna get back to my parents? Can I really picture my whole children's childhood being without my parents? And I couldn't. And so even though we knew that California was no longer the state for us for a lot of different reasons that I've both said and insinuated here on this channel, I knew that I wanted to be with my family again, and I wanted that for my kids, and I wanted that for me. I didn't want to struggle in the same way that my parents struggled, and I didn't want my kids to wish for a relationship with their grandparents in the way that I wished for a relationship with my grandparents. I do believe that it does in fact take a village. You can get by without a village, but even still, really can you? We all need some semblance of a village. We are all interconnected in some way, but if you don't choose your village for yourself, it will be chosen for you via all of the public work systems, via even like your food. You could say that as well. Like if you don't go out of your way to find a food network, then your food at your grocery store is essentially chosen for you. Yes, you make choices. You decide what you buy when you're shopping, but what's there is what's there if you aren't building that village yourself. And I think that that can essentially be applied to everything. And I think it's really important that we recognize that we have choice, and that some things may take more effort, but honestly, the best things in life take effort. And we don't want to just hand our life away and our choices away to other people that we don't know, that have been background checked. You know, we want to cognizantly, is that the word? Yeah, I think so. We want to be aware of the choices that we're making and weigh out what's best for us, what's best for our kids, our family, our extended family. Sound off in the comments, guys. Let me know your thoughts if you have any. If you want to share any stories with me, I would love to hear them. I always love hearing what you guys have to say. And with all of that being said, I will, God willing, see you guys back here soon with another new video. Bye, guys.